in human history. Let that sink in as we take a closer look at the search and the investigation. Mary Schiavo is here with us. She's a CNN aviation analyst and a former inspector general for the Department of Transportation, now an attorney who represents victims and their families after airplane disasters. It's interesting to hear them say it, and it goes over in my mind. It really is the most difficult search in human history.
Oh, absolutely, and made even worse by the fact that we don't have any clues from the plane itself. So to search the vast ocean without any hints from the plane, as we had in Air France 447, makes it exceedingly difficult, and of course sheds more criticism and the examination upon the black box technology and how we need to change that.
And because we don't have the debris from the plane and the humans trying to assess where the debris could be, some of that intelligence and data keeps getting shifted. For example, we know the search area, Mary, has changed yet again.
Yes, that's the, good news, bad news. The good news is they continue to refine the data. The bad news is they're using data that it's difficult to do it because this data and these satellites were never intended to do this.
Sure.
And if only we would change our focus from a black box to more of a glass box where we would continuously download the data, they'd have a much better chance. And I think that has to be the clarion call out of this accident, is to change it to the modern technology of the downloads. But the change in the location might be good news because that means they have refined the data once again.
So to that streaming idea, the glass box, I like the way you put that, a continuous stream. We know that's obviously going to be expensive. We know that there's going to be some reluctance on the part of the airlines and manufacturers. Do you think it's likely in the next few years we'll see it?
The only way we will see it, and I have seen this time and time again with changes that have been tried to be put in place after accidents, is it must be made, and I think the United States should lead the way. Australia is very progressive on this too, having invented the black box. Maybe they can now push for the glass box, but it's going to require government regulation. The airlines simply will not put in place any new things, any new technology, any new requirements on their operations unless it is federal regulation.
Right.
And I think that's the way to go. The government has to say, look, it's enough of this. Let's move into the 21st century with our technology for finding planes.
Well, that's the importance of the parts of the investigation, is learning what to fix for next time, or so there won't be a next time. Let's go back to the calculations and the data. Do you trust the math that these estimates of the search area are being based on, or the people doing the math?
Well, I certainly trust the people doing the math because the Joint Task Force in Australia has managed to amass just the greatest minds in terms of this technology in the world. But the problem is we're taking different satellites and different data and trying to mesh them together into one coherent set of points. And so not all the coordinates and not all the satellites add up. So it's like, trying to combine the old saying of apples and oranges. And I think obviously they're doing an admirable job in continuing to refine the data, but they're putting together various points of data from different satellites that were never really intended to be air traffic control satellites. So that's part of the problem of solving this mystery. And while it's great that they can continue to refine the data, there's no assurance that all of the data really lines up in these points. So it is the best. I think the Prime Minister, the Australian Prime Minister, said it best. It's the best of what they have, and they're searching, and they're clearly doing their very best as well. But it's just not the kind of data that you usually use to find an aircraft. But it's remarkable that they have it and have been able to use the math to come up with the points that they have.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to put both your inspector hat on and your attorney hat on. You've been calling for that raw Inmarsat data, the ping data, to be released so that the scientific community at large can sort of aid in the calculation of it. Now, that's the investigator aspect, but now let's talk about the attorney part. Will that compromise the investigation going forward? And is it worth it to do that?
Oh, I don't think so. Oh, it is worth it to do it, and I don't think it'll compromise the investigation at all. Many things, at least a couple things that the Malaysian officials had said would never be released. For example, the transcript of the air traffic control tapes. Just last week they told the families it was sealed and it wouldn't be released, and then it was released, and the investigation goes forward. Same thing now on the radar and satellite data. I think even crowdsourcing might help. At this point, they need everyone to help find this plane, and I cannot see how that would compromise a criminal investigation because the criminals certainly didn't have access. If there are criminals, we don't know if it's criminal or if it's just a mechanical, a terrible mechanical disaster. But the alleged criminals, if any, certainly didn't have access to the satellites and the satellite data, so that can't compromise the investigation. And the final thing that's still a mystery, which Malaysia hasn't said much about, is last week they told the families there was also some sort of surveillance tape or information from the airport security, and that hasn't been released yet. So maybe there's some information there that we just don't know about, that the Malaysian authorities do have to help them further investigate this awful mystery. But that's where we are, and they say they've cleared the passengers. It was rather quick that they did that, but presumably they have a lot of resources. They're looking at the crew, and other than that, there's just not a shred of evidence.
And that's the problem. We're 27, 28 days in, Mary Schiavo, and it sounds so cliche, but there are more questions than there are answers. Thanks so much.